And I'm going to broadcast now. If you want to hold on a second just to make sure we have a good connection for the public, maybe 10 or 15 seconds to be sure. We are live, and it'll just give a moment for the public to connect.
Sounds good. Thank you, Andy. And I only see, we're going to give it a few more moments for those that are just logging on so we can allow folks to connect to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Just to let folks know as you're logging on, this is Rob Ciampetti, Chairman of the ZBA. We're going to get started in just a few moments. And this is the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Newburyport, hearing date of April 27th. And we are published to begin at 7 p.m. It being 7 p.m., we've just opened up the recording and opened up the attendees, the Zoom attendees login so that folks can get themselves logged on. I believe we are just about in it deep enough that I will start to get things started. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome and good evening. Welcome to the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals for the hearing of April 27th, 2021. My name is Rob Ciampetti. I'm the chairman of the ZBA, and with me this evening, in addition to the members of the board, whom I will represent in a moment, whom I will introduce in a moment, are Caitlin Sullivan, our city planner, Mr. Andy Port, our planning director, and Ms. Gretchen Joy, who is our keeper of the minutes. In addition to that, we have a full board in attendance this evening, and I will go through our roll call, which is following our meeting agenda. The first order of business is our roll call. We will establish a quorum. I'll then walk through quickly the format and flow of the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing, how we will conduct the business this evening and move through our agenda. So beginning with establishing our quorum and the call of the roll, if I can ask the members of the Zoning Board of Appeals in attendance to please respond by saying either here or I as I call your name. Mr. Mark Moore.
Here.
Mr. Stephen Delisle.
Here.
Mr. Ken Swanton.
Here.
Mr. Bud Shannon.
Here.
And Mr. Gregory Bennett.
Here.
And I'm Rob Ciampetti. I am also here. That is 6 members of the ZBA in attendance. Our voting members this evening, unless there is a recusal, the 5 voting members this evening for each of our hearings going forward, which is 65 Curzon Mill, which is merely a continuance request, 490 Merrimack Street, 60 Liberty Street, 32 Turkey Hill Road, and 25 Chestnut Street, will be Mr. Mark Moore, Stephen Delisle, Mr. Swanton, Mr. Shannon, and myself. And having established a quorum of voting members of the board, we can move forward with our hearing business for this evening. So as I've just gone through the call of the roll, I'll introduce the board. Again, Mr. Mark Moore is our vice chair, Mr. Stephen Delisle, our secretary, Mr. Ken Swanton, member, Mr. Walter Bud Shannon, member, and our associate member, Mr. Gregory Bennett. And again, my name is Rob Ciampetti, chairman. If for those of you that may not have attended a Zoom version of the Zoning Board of Appeals public hearing, like most of the city of Newburyport and cities throughout the Commonwealth conducting hearings and public business during COVID, we will run this meeting via Zoom, and we will basically run it through by adhering to the Robert's Rules of Order. So essentially what we'll do first is we will go through each of the applications that are on our agenda in the sequence that you see them. And if you wish, you can go to the City of Newburyport's website, and the ZBA page will give you a hyperlink to the PDF, which is our agenda, as well as all the supporting materials so that you can follow along. But Mr. Andy Port, our planning director, will be putting up on the Zoom screen everything that we're talking about. And as each presenter presents material in their application presentation phase, Mr. Port will put up those relative slides so that everyone in attendance can follow along and see what is being referred to and what's being referenced by either members of the board or by the applicant or the applicant's representative. So the way the flow of the hearing works is I will begin by announcing by name and address each hearing as we begin. I will read the applicant's name as well as the address, and then quickly the docket number itself, and then the request being sought, the relief being sought, whether it's a variance, a dimensional variance, a special permit or a special permit for nonconformities, etc., and a quick description of exactly what the applicant is seeking just by describing it. This will follow the public legal notice that was published, as well as what the agenda has detailed as in more descriptive language, so that any member of the audience can follow along and know what application we're talking about and exactly what the applicant is seeking the board's review and seeking in the form of relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals. After we read the public notice and read the description of the application, I will then open the floor up to the applicant or the applicant's representative to present the application. That's when you will hear the applicant either themselves or their representative, whether it be the architect, engineer, attorney, anyone or everyone in between, will speak and present to the board the application. After the conclusion of that, we'll close that portion of the public hearing and we will go to comments from the public. This is when we open it up to public comment, and Mr. Port will put a slide up that just briefly describes what many of you may have seen in the past. And if you haven't, it simply lays out the rules of the road that we ask everyone's courtesy and abiding by. We ask that members of the public please give your full name and address so that Ms. Gretchen Joy, our keeper of the minutes, can record your name. And then don't feel obligated to say whether you're speaking in support of or in opposition to the application. If you do wish to do that, feel free. But if you're not sure, don't feel obligated to pick a lane. Just simply give us your name and your address and let us know what you're thinking. We ask that you keep your comments to about 2 minutes, just as a courtesy and in the interest of time and pace. We ask that everyone kind of keep those comments to about 2 minutes. If anyone's running long, we try to extend courtesy, but I may chime in and just ask folks as respectfully as I can to kindly wrap things up so that we can hear from anyone who wishes to speak. At the conclusion of the public comment section, we will then close that portion of the hearing. And I'll just note, for those that haven't done this before, when you wish to speak, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see a yellow icon of a hand and it says raise hand. Just simply click that and we will then note that you wish to be recognized. I will then recognize you by name and I can see either your name or your telephone number if you're logging in by phone, and I'll ask Mr. Port to open your mic and you will have the floor. So feel free to do that, and that's how you will be recognized. As we finish that, we'll close that portion of the public hearing. We then go to a section called questions from the board. This is when members of the ZBA will ask questions. Oftentimes they will, having heard comments from the public, they will adopt those comments in the form of a question. And they may ask a question of the applicant, they may pose a question of the applicant's representative, etc. And that's sort of how questions from the public is manifest in the form of the hearing itself. Members of the board will be listening attentively and will themselves likely have questions, and will adapt questions that they've heard others raise. After we have gone through the questions from the board, we will close that portion of the public hearing and we go to then the final stage before voting, which is called deliberations. Deliberations is essentially when members in attendance and the applicant and everyone who is on this Zoom call gets to listen to the board discuss and think out loud. So essentially, members of the board will toil with the legal criteria that has to be met, whether the applicant has met it, questions that are that have remained unanswered. They may circle back for additional questions, but it's when the board will go through the legal criteria of whatever relief is being sought and determine and analyze and evaluate out loud for everyone to hear and observe whether the applicant's met that burden, and if so, how, and if not, where they haven't, and such. So you'll hear the discussions of the board members during that segment of deliberations. After we conclude deliberations, I'll then close that portion of the public hearing, at which point I will ask for a member of the ZBA to make a motion to approve. And under the Robert's Rules of Order, the way we advance the matter along is in the form of a motion in the affirmative, a motion to approve. That doesn't mean that the member of the board making the motion seeks to approve it or plans to vote yes. It's simply the means by which we place on the floor the motion to advance this application, and it's in the form of a motion to approve, which must be seconded. After it's made and seconded, I'll then call the roll, and we'll go through each member of the ZBA to vote either yay or nay. In order for the motion to carry and the application to be successful, we have to have at least 4 voting members of the ZBA vote in the affirmative. If we have 4 members of the ZBA vote in the affirmative, the motion carries and the application is approved. If it is in the negative, the motion fails and the application is denied. We do often entertain motions, even at the last moment, by the applicant to withdraw without prejudice, to maybe go back to the drawing board, etc. We find that to be in furtherance of a better project when folks try to sharpen pencils and try to make things better. And so we do grant quite a bit of latitude with respect to that. So that's essentially the lay of the land and the rules of the road on ZBA. So without further ado, we're gonna jump right into the first hearing. And I believe what I'll do is I will start with just reading this first application, 65 Curzon Mill, although it's a matter continued from the hearing of March. This says March 32, 2021. I think it's March 12th. Is that
Thank you. Yes, Chair. Thank you.
So March 12th, 2021. So it's the application by Brendan Johnson and Christina Creel Johnson, 65 Curzon Mill Road, docket 2021-06, a dimensional variance to construct a new 2-story garage and master bedroom addition, creating a new side yard nonconformity. I believe we have a request by the applicant's representative to continue that to the hearing of, what was the, let's see, it looks like the hearing of May, let's see, May 25th, 2021. Does anyone wish to speak in connection with the request to continue, or can the board just proceed on the request?
And I don't believe we have the applicant in the audience this evening.
Great. So as a board, we'll just members of the ZBA, we can just act on the applicant's request to continue to the hearing of 5/25/21. Do we have any comment, or in the absence of comment, do we have a motion to continue?
This is Mr. Delisle. I'll make a motion to continue the variance application for Curzon Mill Road, for 65 Curzon Mill Road, application number 2021-06 to the meeting of May 25th, 2021.
Seconded, Ken Swanton.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Motion's made by Mr. Delisle, seconded by Mr. Swanton. Calling the roll, Mr. Moore.
Mr. Chairman, I would be recused from the actual application, so I don't know if I should vote on this.
Very good. That's fine. With Mr. Moore's recusal, Mr. Bennett will vote on the motion and step up to our fifth voting member. Calling the roll, Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes, 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. The motion carries. The matter of 65 Curzon Mill Road is continued to the hearing of 5/25/21. Thank you very much. All right, so moving to the next application, the next full application that's before us. It's the matter of Tag Development LLC, care of Lisa Mead, Tallerman and Costa LLC. The application is 490 Merrimack Street, docket 2021-16, a special permit for nonconformities. The applicant seeks all necessary permits to renovate the existing residential structure into a garage and construct a new single-family home attached to the garage. And I believe we have, if I'm not mistaken, we have Attorney Mead speaking on behalf of the applicant, or
Attorney Costa.
Sorry about that. Attorney Costa speaking on behalf of the applicant. Attorney Costa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Adam Costa, not Lisa Mead, but with me, Tallerman and Costa, on behalf of the applicant, Tag Development, and the owner of the property, the 490 Real Estate Trust, and Courtney Metcalf, the trustee of that trust. So thank you, members, for the opportunity to present this application tonight. It is an application for a special permit for nonconformities. I've got a brief, relatively brief slideshow for you to give you an overview of the proposal. With me tonight as well, virtually, is Scott Brown, the architect for the project. And what I hope to do, and try to do it as efficiently as possible, is I'll work through the first few slides of the presentation just to provide a general overview of the proposal and the request for the special permit. I'll give a very general overview of the site plan, but then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brown to complete the presentation of that site plan, and obviously to walk you through a series of architectural plans that will give you better sense and a depiction of the project and the proposal. And then I'll just wrap it up at the end with a few photographs of the existing conditions and walking the board through the special permit criteria that you are obviously quite familiar with. So Mr. Port, if you could move, appreciate it, to the next slide. So the existing conditions at the 490 Merrimack Street property, this is a property located in the R1 zoning district. It has an existing structure, a relatively small structure on the site now that was built in or around 1890. As you might have noticed, if you had an opportunity to review the paperwork and the narrative that we submitted with the application, the owners had gone before the Historical Commission back in November of last year and actually received a release for the demolition of the property. It was determined to be historically significant, but not preferably preserved because of its poor condition. My understanding is that through discussions that ensued, it was decided by the applicant to preserve the existing structure or a substantial portion of the existing structure because it provides for a consistent streetscape, but to convert the portion of the existing structure to a garage and then to build essentially an addition onto it that would be the new single family home on the property. And again, in a moment, you'll see the site and architectural plans that depict the proposal. So there are a series of nonconformities, as there are with several of the properties in the neighborhood. With this property at 490 Merrimack, it requires 20,000 square feet for the R1 zoning district, and the lot only has 11,100 square feet, so it's an undersized lot. With respect to frontage, this lot actually is quite close to the frontage requirement. It has 122.6 feet, and the district requires 125 feet, so it's about 2.5, just shy of 2.5 feet short of the requirement for the district, but nonetheless still non-conforming as to frontage. With respect to the existing structure, it requires a front yard setback of 30 feet, but the existing structure is set back only 10.9 feet. Again, the idea was to retain the existing structure and convert it to a garage, as you'll see in the depictions that'll follow, to maintain the consistent streetscape, even though that non-conforming front yard setback exists. And then with respect to the side yard setback, it requires a setback of 20 feet, whereas on one side, specifically the west side of the existing structure, the setback is about 4.5 or 5 feet short of that requirement. It's only 15.1 feet in that location. So the proposed application that's before you tonight, as I alluded to, is to reconstruct the existing structure into a garage and then to connect it to a new single family home that would be built at the rear of the existing structure. The new single family home portion is entirely within the existing dimensional requirements. And I'm actually going to strike the latter part of the second bullet here where it says apart from a 19.9 foot west side setback, because that was a bit odd to me as I prepared the presentation and reviewed the plans in preparation for tonight. And what occurred after the presentation was prepared is I had a further discussion with Scott Brown, who can expand upon what I'm going to say. But I think that was just a bit of an oversight on our part as we placed that structure within the building envelope. Why would we place it 19.9 feet from that west side boundary when we could move it literally 1.5 inches? We have enough space on the other side to meet the required side yard setback. We can move it 1.5 inches and be within the 20-foot requirement. So we can do that, and we'll show that to you when we get to the site plan. So that the new portion of the structure, the new single family home, will be compliant with the side yard setbacks with all existing dimensional requirements. The portion of the structure, the existing structure that's being reconstructed and converted into an attached garage, will actually improve somewhat upon the existing west side setback. It's currently at 15.1 feet, and it'll be improved by increasing that setback to about 16 feet. But because of the shape of the garage as it presently exists, and again, as you'll see in a moment, because of the manner in which we're extending it, we are extending the length of that setback encroachment, which requires the special permit. And then, of course, any increase over 500 square feet to a non-conforming structure isn't in and of itself a separate trigger for the special permit requirement under the city's ordinance. And so that necessitates the relief that we're seeking now as well. So this is the site plan that I had referenced prepared by Scott Brown. I'm going to give a very brief overview and then yield the floor to him because he can describe his work product much better than I can. But you can see here sort of the lower left-hand side of your screen where it says existing to remain. That is the existing home, the existing structure, which will remain and be converted to a garage. You can see immediately adjacent to it in sort of the gray shaded area, the driveway to the site that'll provide access to that garage. You can see the footprint of the existing house. I mentioned before that it's a portion of it is going to remain, but a portion of it will be replaced. You can see the sort of dashed line that comes off the north side of the existing to remain structure. And there's an arrow that points to it. It says footprint of existing house. So the footprint of the existing house will, the remaining footprint will be eliminated. And you can see the new two-story residence that is proposed to be constructed. And as I had noted a moment ago, if you look in the sort of a red shade, a red dashed line is the typical setback line. And you can see that virtually the entirety of that new two-story residence will be within the current setback requirements. The only exception to that, which we will fix, is in the sort of top left corner, the northwesterly corner, where you see the 19.9 foot measurement, which can easily be moved to 20 because you'll see on the opposite side of the structure, we're 26.1 feet away from the easterly boundary of the property. And we've got space to move, 1.2 inches in that direction to make that structure fully compliant with the dimensional requirements of the district. With that, Scott, if you're on and if you can speak, I'd defer to you to present the remainder of this site plan and then to walk through the ensuing architectural plans.
Sure. Thank you, Attorney Costa. Scott Brown, the architect for the project. So what we're seeing in front of us right now, these are the existing condition drawings that were put together by another designer working for the current owners of the property. These were part of the submission to the Historic Commission. And in these drawings, the dotted lines indicate the areas and features to be removed. In November, when this was before the Historic, they did not have a house design, but they did have the excellent idea of repurposing this older, somewhat dilapidated structure into a garage. And our design, what we're proposing tonight, is consistent with what they were planning to do. Next slide, please. Again, a couple more elevations showing the side, elevations of the existing structure. Next slide, please. These were their proposed elevations, noting materials, not much on the front. Street side elevation of the existing house is changing. And with that, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is a neighborhood with lots of different house styles, all built in different eras. So from a design standpoint, I think one can do many things here and be successful. What we have designed is a cleanly appointed modern house with traditional undertones. Since we are connecting to an older existing structure, I do think that we need to be respectful of what currently exists. So we're taking some of our design cues from that existing structure. On our front elevation below, our 2/2 window pattern matches what is currently there. Our new eave and trim details are all very, very simple and more or less, match what currently exists. We've done our best to keep the height of the new section of the house as low as possible. A lot of the second floor is under the roof, almost cape-like. And the new ridge is less than 7 feet above the existing 1.5 story house. So on this sheet, the bottom elevation is the proposed front elevation as seen from the street. Again, in the lower left-hand corner, this is the existing structure that we are proposing to convert to a garage. That front elevation more or less matches what is there now. The drawing at the top of the sheet here, this is a proposed right side elevation. Again, on the left side, that is an existing structure that we're converting to a garage. You can see the garage doors there. One thing of note, you'll see that the grade falls off as we go to the back of the property. Next slide, please, Andy. And as a result of that grade falling off at the back of the property, which faces the woods, we have a full 2 stories in the back. And we are able to take advantage at the back right corner of this to have a, partially daylight basement, which is very nice to have. And at the top of the sheet, this is the proposed left side elevation. This is the side of the house that faces the driveway for 492 Merrimack Street, which is a house set in the back. And on this side, we're closing down the house a bit in terms of fenestration to provide, both parties with some, some needed privacy. Next slide, please, Andy. And this is our concept rendering, the house as seen from the street. As you can see, sort of here, it forms a bit of an L shape. Main body of the house is set back. As a result, we've created a nice parking court, which is snug, but it will give these folks the ability to turn around and come out facing forward, which is really nice to have on a very busy street. Next slide, please. And these are the existing photos. I believe these were taken last summer. Next slide. And I think with that, I'll hand it back over to Attorney Costa, who I think was planning to go through these. Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Brown. So we've got here just a series, and Mr. Port can work his way through them, but the next several slides are just photographs from different angles of the existing structure. Again, it's also my understanding that these were taken sometime in the summer or fall. So they're a number of months old, but they give you just a little bit of a sense as to the dilapidated condition, to use a word that Scott did, of the existing structure. And obviously you've got some overgrown vegetation and whatnot. So this will be a significant improvement to the aesthetic of a site that is very visible. I know I drive by it, coming to and from my office all the time. So that's the current condition. So the final slide in the presentation is just, as we often do, a recitation of the criteria for a special permit for nonconformities for a single or 2 family residential structure in your zoning ordinance. So it's a 2-part test. First part is that there will be no addition of a new nonconformity. That's an easy one to address because we're not proposing the addition of any new nonconformity. The nonconformity that exists is with respect to the existing structure that we are retaining in part, and the new addition that's being constructed at the rear of the site is within within all the setback requirements of the ordinance as we showed you, or will be once we adjust that 19.9 foot setback from the westerly side yard. So the second part of the test is that the proposed change will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the pre-existing non-conforming structure, and that's iterative of the statute, Chapter 48, Section 6. So in this case, we believe, number one, that maintaining the streetscape is a positive thing through reuse of the existing home and its conversion to a garage. We believe, as again Scott alluded to, that the proposal is consistent with and fits with the existing neighborhood, which contains a whole variety of different structures. There's 2 family homes across the street. There's a Cape style house. There's a 2-story house. There's a ranch style home. So it's not as if this is a neighborhood where there's a single type of style of home that prevails, and we're building something different. It's a home that is already includes a variety of different styles of structures. And then again, as I just mentioned, the new single family home is within the dimensional requirements, and we will rectify that 1.2 inch differentiation on the side yard setback. So the only thing I want to comment on, just in concluding, and before I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, is I did have an opportunity to review the staff report prepared by Ms. Sullivan, and I see that it summarized much of what I've already said in terms of the merits, or the substance, I should say, of the proposal. It also notes importantly that the Office of Planning and Development has no objection to the proposed project. There is a reference to the project appearing to trigger the tree and sidewalk ordinance, which we understand. And Ms. Sullivan references an email response from Connie Preston, the chair of the Tree Commission, responding that the sidewalk at the property is a brand new asphalt sidewalk due to the Merrimack Street repaving project, and that the site has room for 3 new street trees and has a recommendation as to what those trees would be. And we have no objection to that recommendation or to the proposed motion in the staff memorandum that would incorporate that as a condition of approval. And obviously, an additional condition of approval would be for me to follow through consistent with the representation that I've made, that we will adjust that 1-inch side setback, and we can submit plans to that effect to the board prior to application for a building permit or something along those lines. So we can make that adjustment and bring that structure fully into compliance, even though it's only a 1-inch deviation. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Ciampetti. Appreciate the opportunity to present the application. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Attorney Costa. And thank you, Mr. Brown, for the presentation. So we will close that portion of the public hearing, the presentation portion, and we will go now to public comment. Andy, if you could go ahead and put up the public comment detailed instructions slide. And with that, we will invite members of the public to kindly just click the bottom of your Zoom screen to raise your hand, and we will do our best to acknowledge everyone who wishes to be heard one at a time. And we'll ask you again, if you wish to be heard on this application, to kindly just give your name, your full name and address, so that our keeper of the minutes can record it. Looking at our roster here of attendees, I do not see any hands raised yet to speak in support, opposition, or simply speak. Going once, going twice. And again, we can certainly circle back if someone is sort of late to the comment. We often grant some flexibility when it's when we're able to. Seeing no comments, I'm going to close that portion of the public hearing and go to questions from the board. And we will begin questions from the board with, let's see, why don't we begin with Mr. Moore? You're voting on this application?
I'm good on this one. Yeah, the only one was
Great.
Curzon Mill. So
All right.
good to go.
So any questions? And starting with Mr. Moore, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions, or maybe just one question. It was mentioned that in the summary of the staff report about the new asphalt sidewalk that was installed with the street project. I believe the asphalt sidewalk was kind of the default thing if there was no interest in the owner for upgrading to concrete. And I noticed a part of that sidewalk was concrete. I think probably around it looked like around a manhole cover, some kind of municipal service. And I wonder, with the total upgrade of the property, I mean, it looks fantastic. If there's any consideration to upgrade the sidewalk from asphalt to concrete.
So, Mr. Chairman, through you.
Yes, please, Attorney Costa, feel free.
So we hadn't given any consideration, only because the asphalt was so recently installed. I certainly appreciate the question and appreciate that a concrete sidewalk is an upgrade as compared with asphalt. But where the sidewalk was just redone, it was not something that we had contemplated as part of the proposal. And the first reference that we saw to the tree and sidewalk ordinance, again, which we have no objection to, was in the staff memo, and there was no suggestion there that the sidewalk would be altered, so we hadn't given it any consideration. Scott, if you have additional information, you're certainly welcome to share it, but that's what I know.
Very good. Mr. Moore, anything further?
That's it right now.
All right. Thank you, Attorney Costa. And Mr. Delisle.
The only questions I would ask would be for Mr. Brown, just to give us maybe a thumbnail sketch of the materials to be used on the existing structure as it is rehabilitated, and on the new structure to be constructed.
Oh, excellent question, Mr. Delisle. I mean, if we could just scroll back. So there have been drawings that have been submitted and approved to the Historic Commission. And I think it's slide 6, which might show those right there. Maybe the next slide, one of these here. But in short, you know, we're going to be proposing, consistent with these approved drawings, a painted cedar sidewall, clapboard, rot-resistant materials. The windows will be clad wood, most likely aluminum clad, with simulated divided lights. We are right there in the front left corner, proposing to install a new door on the existing structure, which is consistent with what would have been there. You know, the trim will be replaced, and like I had previously mentioned, you know, some of those existing details are going to replicate what is already there. The other thing that we're showing here as well, we're showing a brick veneer foundation, which is also consistent with that, you know, approval from the Historic Commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Delisle, was there anything further?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Swanton.
No, I thought the presentation pretty much covered everything. I have no questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Swanton. Mr. Shannon.
I guess I had a quick question for the applicant. I think in driving by this very small, modest house, it's kind of in front of another house that's set quite a ways off the street. It's sort of like a pork chop lot. I didn't know if there'd been any discussions with that homeowner. Obviously, this new home is quite a bit larger than what's there. And it's more for screening purposes, or maybe there already exists trees in the yard to help protect, you know, this larger building from being right in front of their house. If the applicant could talk to that.
Yeah, I can. You know, I guess I could speak to that a little bit. Like, one of the things that we're absolutely planning to do here, and obviously this is very early in the planning stages, but we are planning to have a pretty robust landscaping plan, you know, to provide a bit of privacy along that left side lot line, which is, you know, where the driveway is to that rear property. And we're also planning to do it in the back of the property as well. I think it's in the best interest of both parties to, you know, have a landscaping privacy screen along those lot lines.
All right, thank you. That's all, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon, and thank you, Mr. Brown. I'll chime in and without reiterating any additional questions, I think it's a detailed presentation. I appreciate Scott Brown giving us the material detail. That's always a concern for me. And thank you, Andy, for bringing up slide 10. This is always a great rendering. This looks like a Rob Lena production, if I'm not mistaken, but if it isn't, it's still a very nice artistic rendering of the you know, of the final product. And I certainly am appreciative of the applicant's efforts to be respectful to the original and modest house that was in the foreground and on the fore portion of the parcel, and continuing to repeat and restate everything from, you know, attention to scale, fenestration, materials, trim and detail, and having it be, you know, having it be appropriate to the period. The only concern, or I should say question I have, is regarding the sidewalk. I share the sentiment of Mr. Moore, if I heard his question correctly. Notwithstanding, and I'm familiar with that part of the city and the restoration of the sidewalks, which inexplicably, I think it was mostly due to budget constraint at the time, just simply stopped short in the poured concrete sidewalk And as a sort of a stopgap measure, because they had to do something, at least that's what the city councilors with whom I'd spoken had shared with me. They simply they had to put down asphalt, and so they followed the nape of the earth in many instances versus re-leveling it. I, for one, just feel that in the spirit of our tree and sidewalk ordinance, that it's appropriate given the scale of this rehab and adaptive reuse and reconstruction, that we use this opportunity to right the ship on with respect to that short. I know it's quite a frontage, but I think it's appropriate that it be poured concrete versus what's there. And the reason I say that is that I observe ever more and more, especially as the weather warms, folks, members of our community, using all of the sidewalks and making their way down to Mosley Wood to Mosley Woods and elsewhere. I'm just never of the mind that when we don't have an opportunity, that we don't take that opportunity to to create a nice curb appeal and streetscape. So I guess my question, and this is a long-winded version of it, is to what extent, Scott, or Attorney Costa or Mr. Brown, to what extent is the applicant willing to revisit a request of this board to consider upgrading that sidewalk from the blacktop macadam to something a little bit more stable and and square and tight in the form of concrete?
So, Mr. Chairman, I can respond to that. This is Adam Costa. So I do miss the good old days when I could nudge my client next to me and try to get an answer, but at least we can use texting and such to try and communicate while these hearings are underway. So I've just communicated with my client, and my client has no objection to replacing the asphalt sidewalk along the length of the property with a poured concrete sidewalk. And in fact, has indicated that they anticipated likely doing that anyway for a more consistent look, similar to what you're currently seeing on your screen.
Well, I appreciate that, and please, on our behalf, or at least my behalf, extend our gratitude to that consideration point to your client. The second part of my question is related to that. As we see the transition from the macadam and the street grade to the apron, which is now presumably going to be poured concrete, to the sidewalk right of way, also poured concrete and seamed in the ordinary, method. What will be the parking field cover? What's your anticipated material choice there?
Do you know the answer to that, Scott?
It looks like concrete in the rendering, but it definitely doesn't look like blacktop, at least in the coloring, unless it's just a placeholder coloring. I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah, quite honestly, Mr. Chairman, we didn't really give much consideration as to what the surface of that parking court would be. But in an ideal world, budget permitting, I mean, that would look really nice in some pavers, but that would be certainly something that we'd have to, sort of discuss with our client down the road.
Okay, so my concern only is, in my tenure on the board, we often are reticent to place, an emphasis in our design to emphasis on the vehicle. We don't, at least in Newburyport, often favor designs that put garages up front, and sort of what we see in other communities. With the greatest of respect to those design choices. In Newburyport, and it seems at least in my experience, we try to place the architecture in the foreground and the appurtenance necessary to accommodate vehicles somehow as a subtext. We try not to create we don't highlight those sections when we can avoid it. Here, the applicant's asking us to approve the setback of the house off of the natural, we'll call it the organic setback of at least the existing structure, and create that L shape. My only concern, Scott, is that, this rendering creates a wonderful visual image. And I think it lends partially to the coloring of the parking field. It may well look like a parking lot, right? If it's all black. And so that's my concern, it's practice in execution versus versus practice in design. And I just want to make sure, because I've seen it happen before inadvertently, that it comes out looking different and feeling different, and the aesthetic is somehow compromised because so much attention is paid to what, you know, the parking and the cars. And so I ask about it because we do this if it's in the south end, we do it if it's in the north end, we do it downtown Water Street, you know, West End and such. So I don't want to give any less attention to it because we're down on Merrimack Street. So I just figured I'd ask your thoughts.
Well, Mr. Champetti, I think the one thing about the rendering, it is an artistic rendering. So there's a few things here that we don't quite have right. And I think one of them in looking at this is really the transition between sort of like the curb cut and the parking court. And if we can kind of go back to our site plan for just a minute, slide 4, Andy. Yeah, so, you know, one of the things that we're seeing in that rendering that's really deceptive is that neck. You know, right here, we're showing sort of a very narrow neck,
Right.
which we're not showing in our rendering. So I really think that, and of course, would like to make this whole parking court pavers. I think that would make for a rather elegant project, but it is a very costly item to do. And we would certainly have to see about that down the road if their budget permits that. But all of that said here, the way that I'm showing this parking court in this site plan is a very narrow neck. So I think we could successfully transition to a different type of material from a concrete sidewalk to an asphalt parking court. Because really here it's quite closed down. And I also think that once we put together a landscaping plan for this, we're going to have quite a few plantings in and around that that entrance to the parking court. And again, I think, you know, if this were to be asphalt, I think that could be successful because it's not as open as we're showing, you know, in our artistic rendering.
I appreciate that, Scott. And so let me just sort of speak my mind and forgive me, you know, for the bluntness. I just want to cut to the chase because I know this. I have for, you know, the 19 years I've been on this board, I've always really paid a close attention to the gateways to our city, things that folks that are visiting see first and foremost as they come and go. High Street obviously is principal, Route 1 and the Gillis Bridge, principal, Merrimack Street, principal. And I often have felt, you know, that it you know, when we don't pay close attention to, you know, to the gateway sort of, you know, the image, you know, the image and aesthetic that we, you know, that we communicate in our design choices, you know, and I know this is just me speaking freely. You know, we don't police taste, right? We don't govern taste, but when we're asked for the removal of so much green in favor of so much, you know, impervious cover, it matters. And I know this because I feel as though I allowed myself to have made what I believe is a less than ideal choice in the way I voted on a similar project, also on Merrimack Street, further, only slightly down on the other side. And we permitted a large parking field, and it was blacktop then, and I think it was like 2008, 2009, and it's blacktop today. And it looks like a parking facility, right? And I don't want to find myself making the same mistake without at least voicing the concern that I have about that. So I'm thinking, would, you know, as a respectful sort of volley to your client and to the design, what about something like stamped concrete as a, you know, as a consideration for materials? It's not necessarily blacktop. It's certainly not as costly as pavers, but it doesn't present this, you know, this vast dark field of asphalt at the front of your beautiful work, to be quite honest. And you know, I say this from experience. I am not, you know, I'm not shy at all to say that I've seen your work. I admire it. I'm a fan. I've seen you do good work for the city. So I love to see this project continue to reflect that, and I know it will. But I offer that just for your expertise because I trust you and Attorney Costa in representing your client's desires to our board. And then, you know, I want to be fair in my sentiment as just one voting member.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Sure.
So I've again had the opportunity to communicate with my client, and that's acceptable. Obviously, the finished product is important here, and Ideally, it would look quite similar to the very picturesque and aesthetically pleasing rendering that you've got on your screen, even if it's not perfect in terms of the width of the curb cut or the entrance. So, the idea of some sort of a compromise, yes, my client tells me that in an ideal world, and if the budget so permits, the driveway area would be pavers. But of course, pavers are costly. So we would like to avoid, if at all possible, a condition or restriction of an approval that would require pavers and the cost and expense. If the budget allows for it, great. However, we would accept as a condition, if the board would be so inclined, that we not utilize asphalt for purposes of the driveway, that it be minimally, concrete or some other surface that would be more appropriate, more aesthetically pleasing, something that provides, as you said, Mr. Chairman, for a better transition from the sidewalk that we just described to the actual driveway.
All right, I thank you for that extra time, and I certainly wish to thank the applicant for considering this, and I thank my colleagues for indulging my extended time, in asking this question. I just, it's pursuit of the best result, and I think that's what we all sort of share. All right, and thank you very much. I had no further questions. Any other questions from any other members of the CBA before we close that portion and go to deliberations? Seeing no hands, I will go ahead and close the questions from the board, and we will move to deliberations. And as we deliberate, just to remind the board, this is a special permit for nonconformities. So as a special permit for nonconformities, we have to, let me just pull this up real quick. So as this is a special permit for nonconformities, in order for the board to find the application to meet with our approval, we have to determine that the application will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the pre-existing non-conforming use or structure. And of course, when making this determination, we may consider factors such as size, scale, massing, volume, location of the proposed structure or alteration as compared to the existing structure and lot and other structures and lots in the neighborhood, and reasonable alternatives. So with that in mind, and this is section 9B2 of our zoning ordinance. With that in mind, we'll go now to deliberations and start with Vice Chairman Mark Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I mean, the use of the original structure with keeping the streetscape in mind and working that into this whole proposal, I really think is thoughtful and really well done. Given all the accommodations to some requests of the board tonight, it's clear that everyone is on the same page and trying to do the right thing. So given that the new structure is actually going to move to be totally in compliance, and we have no new nonconformities of these plans as presented, given the size and scale of these plans as presented, I just think it's a really, a great project and an improvement for that parcel. So with the addition of the conditions that have been agreed to verbally tonight, and I think I can support this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Moore. And if I might, members of the ZBA, I apologize for this. I wish to just pause for a moment our deliberations because I see that there is one hand that's up, and I, in the spirit of sort of full disclosure and transparency, I would like to take a moment, press pause on deliberations, and at least elicit comments of the one individual that seems to have their hand up, if I might. It looks like a David Hamill. And so I'd like to just reopen public comment for a moment, if only to hear from the one individual with their hand up. Andy, could I ask you to unmute Mr. Hamill's mic?
Sure. Mr. Hamill, are you unmuted?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Or the gang? Hi, gang.
Hello.
So this is actually Mrs. Hamill. This is Karen.
Hello.
I'm sorry.
If you could just give your full name and address. And
yes.
And
so my full name is Karen Damon Hamill, and we live at 496B Merrimack Street in Newburyport. So we built 2 years ago behind our home, which was my husband's grandmother's house, 496. which is 2 doors down if you're facing the house to the left. This is like new to me, guys, because I had to come to meetings for 2 years. So sorry. And I joined late. So
No worries.
yeah, so that's perfect. Awesome. So who am I speaking to?
Well, this is Chairman Rob Champetti, and you are speaking to all of us. And
Oh, hi, everybody. Okay.
Everyone is listening, and the applicant and their attorney and architect are also on as well. So feel free to just let us know your thoughts. And as I described at the outset, we do ask the courtesy of everyone who speaks to kindly try to limit your remarks to about 2 minutes, and you feel free to speak your mind.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, first of all, I heard Scott Brown in there, and he was our architect, and he obviously, it's a beautiful home, and Scott designed our home, which we love very much. So you guys kind of see where we are. So I'm just speaking up and wanted to join in. I had a couple questions, and I'm sorry to join so late, and thank you for taking my call. So how big is the house? How many square feet is the actual house, not the garage?
Okay, and Ms. Hamel, through me, Attorney Costa or Mr. Brown, do you wish to take that question?
Yeah, certainly I can answer it. This is between 2,900 square feet. That is first and second floor space only.
Okay. And then I know, I mean, because obviously we knew the woman that lived in the home who lived to be 90 years old. Like, so for us, it's our neighborhood, even though it's Merrimack Street. This is our neighborhood and our community. And so the existing structure that you're making a 2-car garage, that's going to remain the size of the home. Is that correct?
Attorney Costa or Mr. Brown, feel free to answer that question if you could.
I can answer that. We had presented the plans earlier. So it's the front and the left and right side of the garage of the existing building, as you see it in these photographs, will remain more or less in the location shown. But there is a portion of the rear of the existing structure that will be replaced if Mr. Port goes to slide 4, I think it is, the site plan.
Okay, thanks for going back.
Yeah, if you go back to slide 4, so it's a little difficult to see, but behind where it says existing to remain, you'll see a dashed line in gray with a curved arrow pointing to it that says footprint of existing house.
Got it. Yep.
So you'll see there's a portion of the footprint that's being removed.
Okay. So obviously it's a beautiful home. I'm just want to comment as a neighbor and as a born and raised in this community 48 years and have a local business here. So I just want to comment that I feel that it's a beautiful home. I agree that I think that the garage is absolutely adorable and looks like the rest of the homes, you know, along the street as you guys move down from 490 down to ours, 496, down to the ranch, down to the next house. You know, these houses are a lot smaller and the garage matches, you know, the homes that are right on Merrimack Street. But this is a really, 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 really big house that you guys are building. And you're not building it to live in it, I don't believe. And, you know, whoever buys it, great. I hope our kids grow up together and be a great neighbor. And, you know, I heard that you mentioned the house that is behind where there's kind of that driveway. So the family that lived there, she has passed away and her children lived there. And they were completely opposed to us even putting in a 2-car garage. And you guys are taking the existing, you know, kind of size of the actual home and making it a 2-car garage. So I understand. I mean, I had to attend these meetings for a really long time with my lawyer. I just feel like as somebody that was born and raised in the community and grew up on Fruit Street, I feel like that this is a really, really big house that you guys are putting like right on the street, pretty much. So, you know, I want to be a good neighbor and, but I really feel like I needed to let you guys know that I think that this is, I think it would look adorable if you cut the house in half. So, yeah, I wanted to make sure that I could join in and speak. And, I know you guys are doing this 24/7. I'm glad I'm not doing it 24/7 anymore and that our home is built. We were allowed to build a 1,700 square foot house with a 1-car garage. So, it's pretty crazy. Beautiful. Scott does beautiful work, but I wanted to definitely just speak up on behalf of the Fairweathers couldn't attend, and they're on the Legacy property, and then our neighbors in the back, the Rains, were going to try to attend as well. So anyway, I'm glad you guys let me patch in here after I got my 6-year-old to bed.
Very good. Our pleasure, Mrs. Hamill. Was there anything else you wanted to add? This is Chairman Rob Champetti again.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well.
Good.
Anything else you wish to add?
Let's see. So, no, yeah, if it can all be noted, and after this meeting, when you guys vote, does this then does this mean it goes to another phase? Does this mean zoning has approved it? And where does this project go after tonight? With a yay or nay vote?
I can respond to that just procedurally. Basically, the applicants have gone before the Historic Commission and been given advisory counsel on the historic nature of the structure and have been given design advice, which it appears they've adopted and adapted in reusing the garage, the front portion of the home to remain and become a garage. If it is met with approval before the ZBA this evening, they will have their special permit for nonconformities, and once they wait out the 20-day appeal period, they would be entitled to seek a building permit and commence construction, unless there was anything that remained yet to be decided by another board or commission, such as conservation, and I don't believe so, but I don't know that for sure. Attorney Costa, is there anything before Concom?
There is not, Mr. Chairman. So you are correct. This is not a project. I appreciate the comments about size, but as I alluded to before, the residence itself, irrespective of the garage, which we attempted to preserve for streetscape purposes, the residence itself is conforming in terms of setbacks and whatnot. So we don't require variances from this board or any form of other zoning relief. So absent this special permit, or once we receive this special permit, we would pursue a building permit.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Costa. Ms. Hamill, does that hopefully address most of your question, or is there?
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks, Rob. And I know, we've crossed paths too. So basically you guys are building this house and then it's going on the market for sale, correct? It's not being built for you or families or anybody to live in, correct?
Attorney Costa, you're welcome to answer that if you can.
Yeah, so I don't think that's been determined as of yet. It's a development entity that is building the property, but I don't think that the ultimate use of the property has been determined for certain.
Okay. All right, gang. Well, thanks for letting me patch in, and I'll stand by and see what else you have to say.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Hamill. And so I will now reclose the public comment portion of the hearing, and we will go back to our deliberations phase. And we've heard from Mr. Moore in deliberations. So I'll pick up where we left off, and with the board's indulgence, I will go to Mr. Delisle, and we are in deliberations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that following up on the Mr. Moore and Ms. Hamill, I would just sort of echo what Mr. Moore had previously stated, that it looks like, based on what we've heard tonight, that the applicant has met the special permit criteria in section 9B2A. And I think that the applicant, again, to echo Mr. Moore, should be commended for the reinvention of the existing home, or a portion of the existing home, as the garage to keep the streetscape the integrity of the streetscape. And I think based on that, I can support this project.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I concur with my colleagues. I appreciate you, Chair, bringing up the issue of creating a large thing that looks like a parking lot up front. You know, the compromise for us to say that it could be either concrete or pavers. Let them decide that later. I believe that is a good improvement to this plan. Not sure how to address the abutters issue that has just come up. You know, as I went up and down the street, there seems to be quite a variety of homes. So I think at this point, I believe I can support this proposal.
Very good. Mr. Shannon?
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with my colleagues. Good presentation. Really appreciate the reuse of the small home to become a garage. And I agree with some of the previous statements. Although this house is bigger than the previous house that's on the property, I don't think it's out of place. There are some very large homes in that area. And I think this is modest and to scale. So I can support this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. And I'll just add my comments and certainly they dovetail on my sort of reticence at the outset and concern with respect to the creation of a large parking field of blacktop. And I will say I do also I echo some of the concerns of other neighbors in this area, including the comments that we heard from Ms. Hamill, and I'm sure others from whom we hadn't heard, but perhaps might echo some of the same commentary that massing and scale are always very, very important, and we don't want to create an albatross and create an outlier in anything that we seek to do as a board. I'm also always given to a preference towards some creative adaptive reuse of historic structures, however modest they may be. They don't have to hang a plaque of some notable of our past to be important architectural elements. And this is an example of a saltbox style, sort of modest street facing facade, and had, a larger structure that you didn't see from the front of Merrimack Street, much of which is being removed. I would echo the comments and recommendations of our colleagues from the Historic Commission when they found a creative way to suggest to the applicants to a way to adaptively reuse this original home and create the side entry of a garage and this creation of a new structure. For me, if it were higher than it is, if the roof line was dramatically different than what was originally there, I would be feeling far differently about my tentative support of the project, because I would feel that it might be out of scale. But the architect here and I do share Ms. Hamill and others' comments about our favor with the work of this particular architect in being sensitive and deliberative in trying to find ways to be creative in space. Using the second floor and mostly putting it into the roof line is a wonderful way to minimize the roof impact and not create such a huge scale and mass. I think that the applicants, and I commend the applicant for adapting the Historic Commission's comments, and I also appreciate their willingness to accommodate the sidewalk improvement, which I think is important for all those that live in that area that use the sidewalks, but also the agreement to allow a condition, to accept a condition that whether it be concrete or stamped concrete or pavers, that it won't be asphalt. I think that's important because we don't want it to look like a large parking field. So with those concessions, I feel while it may not be perfect, it is certainly a good adaptive reuse of this historic house, and I think I think they meet the criteria, and I feel like I can support it as well. Any members of the board wish to add any further comments and deliberations? Just show your hands. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one, Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Moore.
Sure.
And agree with what you said about the roof line and the height of this. And I think that really goes to the point of not seeing size and massing and scale being a problem for me. And additionally, the garage itself is going to shield part of the house as the house kind of tucks in behind it. So I think that might mitigate some of the concerns that the house, looks too large for the lot. So it adds to my support of the project.
Yeah, I don't that's a great point. I don't disagree with you. I feel that if these were side by side, it would be greater massing as viewed from Merrimack Street. I do appreciate that some of that is shielded as well. Any other member of the ZBA wish to add to their deliberations before we close that portion of the public hearing? Hearing no further deliberations, I'll close that portion of the public hearing, and we will go now to the motion and voting phase of our public hearing. Do we have a motion from a member of the ZBA?
I will make a motion to approve, especially as Mr. Moore, make a motion to approve special permit for nonconformities. The application at 490 Merrimack Street, number 2021-16, with several conditions. One, that the tree commission chair's recommendation for tree plantings is implemented in coordination with the Department of Public Services. Additionally, that the sidewalk is replaced, asphalt removed and replaced with concrete. And then thirdly, that the driveway will be either concrete in some form, either stamped or some other concrete variety, pavers, or a useful surface other than asphalt. And that prior to any grant of an occupancy permit for a new structure in addition, that these conditions will be met.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore, for structuring, crafting that motion. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Delisle, if I may.
Please.
I think that one other condition I think that Mr. Costa had mentioned would be subject to a revised site plan that shows that it would be totally, the new structure would be conforming in nature relative to that 19.9 foot setback on the left side.
Very good. Thank you for adding that. All right, so we have a motion to approve by Mr. Moore with 4 conditions. Condition 1, implementation of the tree recommendation from our tree committee. Condition 2, the sidewalk to be improved from asphalt to poured concrete. Number 3, that the parking area to be concrete, stamped concrete, and/or pavers, though not asphalt. And finally, 4, that the site plan to be adjusted so as to conform the placement of the parcel with respect to the 19.9 foot left side setback to be presented to the planning department before an occupancy permit can be, or before pulling the permit. Does that fairly state our motion, members?
I would agree.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that. It's Mr. Delisle.
Very good. Motion's made by Mr. Moore and seconded by Mr. Delisle. Calling the roll. Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the application for special permit for nonconformities with the 4 conditions stated is approved. Thank you, Attorney Costa and Mr. Brown. And I want to also thank Ms. Hamel for your comments and participating as well. Moving on now to the next application on our agenda. This is the application of Michael Graff, 60 Liberty Street, application 2021-17, special permit for nonconformities to add 48 square feet of living space in the side yard and extend the roof 4 feet toward the rear yard. We have, I believe, our presenters this evening are Mr. Michael Graff and Cynthia Stolt. May we hear from the applicant?
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for your time tonight. I'm Michael Graff, the architect for 60 Liberty Street, representing Cynthia Stolt. Cynthia currently lives at 33 Market Street in town, and she's very excited to have purchased 60 Liberty and is excited to make this her permanent home. Um, I'll briefly go through the zoning issues that we have. The properties in the R2 district. It is a lot that is non-conforming in several ways, in terms of frontage and lot area. We have principally two items that we're seeking special permit for. One is a slight increase in the lot coverage, and the second is a decrease in the east side setback. So our our lot coverage is presently 29.6%. It's going to 30.1%, and the side setback going from 8.7 feet to 3.3 feet. Let's see, the rear setback, while that is decreasing slightly, it is staying within the requirements of the R2 district. Let's see, prior to my client's purchase of the property, the existing structure had been used as a single family residence with an in-law apartment, and the proposed does not have, we're removing the in-law apartment. So it'll just be a single family residence. The existing structure does not conform at the front, left, and right setbacks. The existing lot also does not conform to minimum required lot area, frontage, lot coverage, and open space. The proposed application would intensify the existing non-conforming left side setback, lot coverage, and open space. The proposed does not result in additional non-conformities. So the proposed application will also not increase the existing height of the structure, and the proposed structure and its relation to the lot are consistent with the surrounding residential structures in this area. All of the proposed changes are allowable within the required dimension controls. I can walk through the architecturals. Andy, you're right where I want you to be, actually, on the existing conditions, A05 drawing. You can see that the property is dilapidated. Also, it's in quite poor condition. The siding, I am estimating that it was put on in about the 1980s when they did substantial work to the house. The windows are vinyl, the shutters are vinyl. The siding is wood clapboard, but it's in poor condition. The property, the house has basically three sections to it, which I'm showing on this drawing also, on this sheet also. The front portion of the house, about the front 32 feet, closest to Liberty Street, is early, probably dating to around 1800. And then there's about an 8-foot addition that does not show up on the 1924 map. And so I'm guessing that's around 1930s. And then about the back 10 to 12 feet is a 1980s addition. And I think at that time, that's when they basically stripped all of the interior detail in the house. And you have things like the photograph number 7 is a typical interior door, just builder grade of low quality. So we're looking to substantially improve the building in terms of its exterior look. Thank you, Andy. On A03, you can see the front elevation existing up at the top, number 2, and proposed at number 3. The addition that we're proposing is quite modest. It's 48 square feet. So because the building is only 16 feet wide, we really needed a mudroom space, and that's the reason for this modest addition. The drawings to the right, number 4 and number 5, show basically the east elevation, and we're extending the roof line back toward the backyard. And that's really to get, we're fairly glassy on the south elevation, and I wanted to have that glassy wall be kind of tucked in, harbored in within the sidewalls. As far as, let's see, Andy, could you go to drawing 4? So number 1 shows existing rear elevation. Number 2 shows the proposed. And then the long elevation shows the, number 3 shows the existing, and 4 shows proposed. We are complying with the DCOD requirements, limiting our demolition to just the rear elevation below the gable, and then the window changes that we're proposing. I bring that up because while I think the ordinance is, the spirit of the ordinance is correct, but as you can see from this proposal, a good portion of this building is not historic at all. That ladder, that rear 10 feet was built in the 80s. So let's see. And as far as materials, everything on the exterior siding trim will be wood. I've indicated so that drawing we're looking at right now is existing. It's an existing asphalt. We're proposing a wood shingle roof. And the existing clapboard siding will be proposed cedar clapboard. The windows will most likely be Marvin clad ultimates, and we'll do a trim detail consistent with the sort of modest historic homes in Newburyport. This is not a fancy home, so it most likely would have flat casing, 1x5 flat casing with possibly a band molding at the perimeter. And the other change of note is the chimney that is on the west side. We're moving to the center to the ridge. So you can see that in drawing AO2. My client, Cynthia, reached out to the neighborhood quite extensively, sent out notes to all of her abutters prior to this application going out. And she's received a couple of very positive responses from immediate abutters. The abutters that actually live on Middle Street, who look at the rear elevation, they were quite positive. And then her abutter to the east was also quite positive. I'll turn this over to the board now for any questions that you might have.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Graff. And if that concludes the presentation, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the public hearing and go to public comment. And Andy, if you can put up the public comment slide, we will now take questions and comments from members of the public. I see the hand of Miss Eve Lee. And if you want to go ahead and unmute Eve Lee's mic. And Miss Lee, if you can hear us, this is Rob Champetti. You have the floor. Just give us your full name and address for our record keeper, please.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Eve Lee, and I am the said abutter at 64 Liberty on the east side. And I just wanted to voice my full support for the project. I'm really excited to see this lovely old house being restored. I think the plans look fantastic, and I just think it's going to be a wonderful enhancement to the block. So just wanted to share my thoughts, and 2 thumbs up.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Lee. Any other comments? Any other public comments? And Mr. Graff, I see your hand is up still. Okay, I just saw it go down. I wanted to make sure you didn't wish to be heard again. Any other comments from the public? Mr. Graff, I see your hand up. Do you wish to be heard further?
Yes, please. Just one other item.
Very good.
So the other item is that this does trigger the sidewalk and tree ordinance, and my client is happy to replace the asphalt sidewalk with brick. And the recommendation, I think, was for 1 tree, but I think that she's happy to do more than 1 if we can fit it. We don't have a lot of frontage, but the area could certainly use a little bit of green out there.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Graff. Any other comments, public comments going once? We have one from, it just says Whitcomb. Andy, if you can unmute that mic, and we will recognize the public comment of Whitcomb.
Whitcomb, could you identify yourself and speak to the board? You'll need to unmute on your end as well. I'm not sure if you have a mic connected. I would note for the chair just that the user of Whitcomb appears to be using an older version of Zoom, so I'm not sure whether they're maybe having any technical issues. But
I no longer see them listed among attendees either, unless you've promoted them to the panel.
yeah, that's because they're using an old version of Zoom in order to try to allow them to speak. I've done that, and I'm not sure that they actually have a mic connected based on what I'm seeing.
All right. Well, if Mr. and Miss Whitcomb wishes to add comments, if there's a way for you to connect, we certainly would welcome them, even if they come later during this hearing. But in the interest of time for the moment, we're going to at least move along. And if there's a way for you to connect, we certainly will take a pause and hear from you. So seeing no other hands for the moment, I will go ahead and, at least for now, close that portion of the public hearing. Possibly to revisit it if we do get a connection from Mr. and Miss Whitcomb. We now will go to questions from the board, and we'll start with Mr. Moore. Mark, can you hear us? Let's see. Andy,
I'm not hearing Mark either. His mic does appear to be working, but he might have.
Okay, very good. We'll come back to Mr. Moore. Mr. Delisle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Graff, I was wondering just if you could tell me about the addition of the mudroom. I'm wondering, based on the drawing, and maybe it's just the fact that this is the drawing and not what you're actually planning, but it looks like, will the clapboard reveal on that addition be the same as with respect to the main body of the house?
And I was going to not have that be the same. If you look at the side elevation, it's so far back from Liberty Street. I thought that we could make a change there and detail that differently. I wanted it to be wood as well, most likely cedar, but not a bevel siding.
I see. Okay. So that's just a design decision.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be an obvious addition. That it wasn't going to try to look like the existing house.
Okay. That's it for now, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's see, we'll go to Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I've noticed this house. It's a sad little house, and I think quite frankly, I think you're doing some wonderful things here. I like I like the 6/6 windows. I like the new siding. I like the wood shingle roof. I like putting the chimney in the center. The only thing is this mudroom, which, it's small. It's set way toward the back. I actually don't have any questions. I think it's nice. So I'll pass on questions.
Very good. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I had one question. It looks like from this drawing that we have up, I think this is A03, that the side door that's on the house today is being removed, being replaced with a window, and the mudroom, I guess, now becomes the main entrance to the house. Could the applicant just talk to why this is being changed? I mean, that's really the basis for having a mudroom, and that's the big thing with the special permit. Could you just address why this is being moved?
Sure. Where well, it's a planning condition. So, as Andy switched to the AO1, you can see that if you enter in that existing side location, there's where the existing door is. There's really no place for you to take off shoes. There's no covering. So you're just walking right into living room. And our feeling was that the house really needed a mudroom space, and it's a modest mudroom space. The other thing that you have with a gable structure like this, when you're coming in from the side, you have all that rain coming down. So with the mudroom entry, you have a sloped roof and the water shedding to the left side as you're looking at that plan. So to answer your question,
sufficient. Thank you. That addresses it. And I guess the other thing I noticed, you're moving the stairway that was in the home. It looks like that used to be where the side entrance was, and now that gives you a larger living space in that area.
Correct. Yes. And the other thing I have to stress is there's nothing original in this house. Nothing at all. There's not one speck of original detailing. In the basement area, there is an old arched brick chimney base that's in a location where there's no chimney up above. They years ago took the chimney down and just left that the brick base there. So, we're basically working with a clean slate inside.
All right, thank you very much. No other questions, Chair.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chen. And I too have no further questions. I think my colleagues have asked them, and appears they've been answered. So I appreciate that. I will take a quick pause, Andy, as I see that in our attendees roster, we have Lynn Whitcomb. Looks like a different entry than last time. And perhaps if Ms. Whitcomb wishes to speak, I'll press pause on questions from the board, and we will we'll entertain a public comment from Ms. Whitcomb.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
This is John Whitcomb. I'm the neighbor abutting to the west.
Would you mind if you could just give your address?
Yeah, 58 Liberty Street.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'd like to say this looks like a wonderful project. It looks to be a beautiful upgrade to obviously the existing. And it's the first time we were able to take a look at it, other than once we got the letter mailed to us to be able to pull it up online. But the only question that I have, being so close to the construction and would be the new basement entry. Could you speak to that, to the west side where we're having, you're building or pouring a new foundation, it being super close, obviously, to our existing foundation, and you're building a staircase that goes down. So that obviously is decreasing the green space, increasing the footprint of the building. And so that's really the only question when I look at this plan that I have.
Sure. So because that stairwell is at grade, it does not count against our lot coverage. It is just access to that lower level. My feeling is that while it is close to your property line, that there is enough room there to do that excavation without disturbing anything on your property.
Very good. Any further questions, Mr. Whitcomb?
No, I guess the only concern that I would have is just how do we ensure that doesn't happen?
Very good. Thank you for your comments, and we'll continue on with the process, and we will now close the reopened portion of the public comment portion of the hearing. And we will now, I believe we've completed the questions from the board portion, and we will close that portion of the public hearing and go into deliberations, starting with Mr. Moore.
I'm back. I don't know what happened. Can you hear me now?
Oh, great. Mr. Moore, actually, we missed you now that I recall, we missed you in the questions from the board segment, and I don't want to move into deliberations. Did you have any questions before we move past questions and go into?
No, I appreciate that, but I got back online and my colleagues and you pretty much hit all the questions. So I am good.
Then we will then, we're right back at you for deliberations. And this is deliberations, the criteria of a special permit for nonconformities. So we'll start with you.
Again, as presented and as we heard from supportive abutters, it's a nice improvement to the property. I think there's no new nonconformities. There's a little bit of an intensification, but I think it's modest and it makes sense within the footprint of the house. So I don't see anything here with the small additions to both sides of the house and the covered porch being an issue with massing or size at all. So I think it's well done, presented well, lots of detail, and I can support it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Delisle.
Yeah, I think that, again, I'm going to concur with Mr. Moore here. There's no new nonconformity here. And I think that the proposed changes will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. This is looks like a timely restoration of a nice historic structure here in Newburyport, so I can support this project.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I agree with my colleagues. I noticed that the little mudroom in the back there, this house is so narrow. I get it why you kind of need to have a side door somewhere there, and a mudroom really helps given the narrowness of the house. So I just think this has been done in a very sensitive way. I rattled off some of it earlier, but I forgot to mention no dormers. I mean, oftentimes in the historic neighborhoods, we're shown houses that are sprouting dormers all over the place, and this has none. I think this is very nicely done, and I can support this with enthusiasm.
All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Swanton. Mr. Chairman.
I have to agree with my colleagues. Although jumping into the side yard setback often gives me a cause for pause. I think this is tastefully done and somewhat necessary with such a long, skinny building and on a long, skinny lot. So I can support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. And Mr. Bennett.
I would agree. I believe that the criteria for a special permit for nonconformities is met here. It's tastefully done and consistent, in my view, with the key criteria regarding consistency and harmony with the neighborhood.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. And I concur with my colleagues' opinions on this proposal. I think it's modest. I think it conforms with the criteria. And I appreciate the effort to keep it in line with the neighborhood versus, as I think has been said, sprouting, dormers in every direction. So I too can support it. Concluding I believe that concludes our deliberations through all of the members of the ZBA. Unless there's any further comments and deliberations, I will close that portion of the public hearing, and we will go to the motion and voting portion. And with that, do we have a motion to approve?
This is Mr. Moore here. I'll make a motion to approve the special permit for nonconformities for 60 Liberty Street, application 2021-17, with the condition that the Tree Commission Chair's recommendation for tree plantings is implemented in coordination with the Department of Public Services prior to grant of an occupancy permit of the project, and that the existing sidewalk shall be replaced in accordance with city specifications in coordination with DPS.
Very good. Motion is made by Mr. Moore with two conditions for sidewalk and tree as per DPS. Do we have a second?
Bud Shagnon, I'll second.
Motion is seconded by Mr. Chagnon. Calling the roll, Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That is 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the special permit for nonconformities on 60 Liberty Street is approved. Thank you very much, Mr. Graff, and thank you for your comments, Mr. Wickham. And with that, we will move on to our next application on our agenda.
Thank you, members of the board.
Our pleasure. We have the application before us of Michelle Alt of 32 Turkey Hill Road. Two components of this application. One is a dimensional variance, docket 2021-19, to construct an addition with a 22.5-foot rear setback where 30 feet is required. And docket 2021-20, a special permit to allow an in-law apartment, which is use 109. With that, may we hear from the applicant? And I believe we have both Michelle Alt as well as John Crow. Ms. Alt or Mr. Crowell, you have the floor.
Hi, this is John Kroll from Deer Hill Architects in Peabody.
Good evening. Feel free to go ahead and present. Thank you.
Okay. The main goal here is to add an in-law apartment to the house. Both of Michelle's parents are elderly and infirm. Her father has recently suffered a stroke, and her mother has, I believe, Parkinson's. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yes, it is.
Okay. We had two main goals in this design, and one, of course, is to continue the appearance of the house as a single-family home, which it is obviously still categorized as. But we didn't want the addition to change that appearance at all. And secondly, it was to make the addition as accessible as possible to people in a wheelchair. In the first regard, we decided to add it to the back of the house. You can see from this that a portion of the back of the house is already covered with an existing deck and a patio. We decided that if we put it on the right end of the house, it would affect that appearance of a single family house. So the most logical place was to put it in the back, and it's behind the garage. The in-law apartment itself, the floor is about 3 feet lower than the existing dwelling, but it is in fact in line level with the garage floor of the house. The entrance to it will be on the left side, and there will be a level sidewalk that comes from the driveway around the left end of the house and into the new in-law apartment. In addition to that, we're seeking to add what I will call a third bay on the garage. The real intention of that is that while Michelle's parents are living there, it will be used as a gym. Both parents undergo physical therapy every day, and without such a space, they'd be forced to be transported to a physical therapy out clinic. If we can provide the space, then the therapist will come directly to the house. The intent is that when Michelle's parents are gone, this space will then be recaptured and used as a third garage bay. You can see here on the front elevation, the front of the house is exactly the same, except for the extreme left, which is the addition of the third garage bay. On the right side and left side elevation, you can see that the in-law apartment extends off the back of the existing house. And in that rear elevation, sort of in the right third or right side of the drawing, you can see the actual in-law apartment. And behind that to the right, you can see the addition of the gym/garage. The in-law apartment, we believe, meets all the criteria required for an in-law apartment and are simply seeking the special permit that is required for an in-law apartment. If you could go back to the site plan, please. The garage addition is closer to the setback than required. And the reason is that as we view this on the plan, the left side of the house is technically considered the rear of the house based on the Newburyport zoning ordinance. The ordinance says that the front of the house is on a corner lot, is the street that has the longest frontage. And therefore at 165 feet on Borbeau versus 120 on Turkey Hill, the primary frontage or the primary front of the house becomes Borbeau Terrace. However, the house is completely oriented towards Turkey Hill Road. Its address is Turkey Hill Road, and as traditionally that has been considered the front of the house. The house was built before the definition entered the zoning ordinance that described what the difference between a primary front yard and I believe it may be termed a secondary front yard. So in all intents and purposes, when this house was built, the left side of the existing house would have been considered a side yard and not a front yard. Notwithstanding that, the zoning code is clear and it is a backyard from that point of view. So we designed this with the intent that we were designing it as if that were a side yard. And we met the side yard setback of 20 feet, but we do not meet the rear yard setback of 30 feet. That's my general presentation. I don't know if you have anything you want to add, Michelle, or if we want to turn it back to the board.
I think we could turn it back to the board.
All right. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you. I think we should turn it back to the board and maybe answer specific questions that you may have.
All right. Very good. Thank you, Ms. Alt, and thank you, Mr. Crowe. With that, we will close that portion of the public hearing and go to public comment. Andy, if you could go ahead and put the public comment slide up, and we will take any questions by the show of a raised hand from anyone among in attendance. Please just click the bottom right raise hand button, and we will recognize you. Seeing no hands raised, going once, going twice, we will go ahead and close that portion of the public hearing and go to questions from the board, starting with Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question on the proposed garage and how it's going to work in concert with the in-law apartment. Could you just get into a little more detail about how that fits together?
Simply, it's on the same floor level as the existing garage and the in-law apartment. And you can see that there are doors that connect from the in-law apartment through the existing garage and into this new therapy, gym, future garage space. So simply the providers will come park in the driveway, enter that door on the left side of the new proposed garage bay, and the occupants will come through the existing garage and enter the gym from inside.
I think I don't have any further questions at this time.
All right, very good. Mr. Delisle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple of questions here. So what is the square footage of the proposed addition to the structure for the in-law apartment?
It is listed there on the drawing as, I believe it says 687 square feet.
Okay, yeah, I see that now. All right, and then, okay. And then you have the garage addition at 276.
Yes.
So that gets you to about 950, but the conceit is that extra garage bay is not part of the in-law apartment.
That's correct. I mean, you know, it's a matter of semantics here, but technically it's not connected to the in-law apartment. And other than the setback issue, which obviously is part of why we're here tonight, this garage bay could be done by right as a separate addition to the single family house, even if an in-law apartment were not being built.
Sure. Yes, either subject to the variance or yeah, right.
Correct. Yes.
With respect to the variance, the sort of the unique condition or circumstance here is the fact that you have the primary front yard and the secondary front yard, and as a result, you're put into a situation where your side yard setback is actually a rear yard setback, and that differentiates this property from the neighboring properties, correct?
That's our contention, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Delisle. Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I was just going to point out what Mr. Delisle just pointed out. So I guess I too understand the reason for the variance and why, you know, you have a unique lot here because of its two frontages, which has resulted in, oftentimes we have people want to do something in a front yard. Yours is a backyard, so it's even less impactful in the neighborhood. So I understand that. I also get, I too once had a family member who had a stroke and had to modify my home. So I get that and the sensitivity to it. My only question is, something that came up in the advice we got from this planning department in looking at this in their staff notes. As you drive down Turkey Hill Road there and look at the house, you're going to now have 3 garage bays, and depending on how you kind of trim out that third bay, I don't know, it could take a little bit of the look of a service station, if you will, with, not a very large house, but with 3 garage bays. And I'm wondering what your plans are to, how you're planning, what the front of this garage is going to look like.
It basically mimics the existing garage doors, the same materials, same siding, same trim. We did set it back a foot from the existing front of the garage, simply to break up that mass a little bit, and not give it quite the appearance that you're talking about. But it is basically treated as the existing garage is treated.
Yeah, that's a good point. The setback, this picture doesn't really show the setback, so that will help a little. That's it's not a bit, it's a small quibble. I understand what you're doing. I don't really have a problem with the variance. So I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
All right, very good. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one question. Noticed in the sketch, there's a dash line showing I guess it's the outline of the driveway. I assume because that third bay is a garage that the driveway will be extended over into the front of that to pick it up so a car can go in and out. Can you confirm that?
Michelle, you can speak to this, but I don't know that the intention at the current time is to expand the driveway while it's being used as a gym. But certainly once it's not being used as a gym, the driveway would have to be widened. And yes, that was the intent, is that would be a functional garage bay, and therefore the asphalt would be widened in front of that.
So you're saying that in step 1, which is to put this third bay, the driveway may not be extended. So that little piece of driveway you can see here, it kind of goes around the side of the house, that would stay, but it wouldn't be made to line up with the new garage.
We haven't fully discussed it as to whether we would or not. Michelle, do you have any feelings or input on that?
I think my expectation is that we would continue the pavement to that third car garage, just so that it would look uniform. And otherwise, if you just kind of added it, I just feel like it wouldn't have as nice as a presentation if we paved all the way up to it. And it won't be a working garage, but at least it will be, I think, more pleasing to the eye as you drive by the house.
Agreed. Thank you. No other questions, Chair.
All right, very good. And I too have no additional questions other than what's been asked. So I thank everyone for the questions, both asked and answered. And we will close that portion of the public hearing, and let's go into deliberations. And as we deliberate, again, this is there's 2 components of our deliberation. So I'll ask members to speak to both the dimensional variance, the criteria, and specifically maybe addressing the hardship, as well as the special permit to allow the in-law. And we'll start with Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, certainly the way that this has been presented is very logical, especially given the needs of the applicant to make ease of use key for this whole proposal. The variance criteria is clear with respect to hardship. I think, given the fact that it's clear that this house faces Turkey Hill Road, and that should be frontage there, because of a quirk in the lot location being a corner lot. Again, we seem to come up with a lot of corner lots in these, and the fact that the logical placement of the addition is as presented and would be, I think, really prohibitively complicated to do it any other way. I think presents some clear hardship with respect to the lot. So I don't think if we were to go forward with this approval for a dimensional variance, this is not giving any special privilege to the applicant at all. The unique circumstances are not a result of anything they did. It was the way that the zoning ordinance was crafted, and it's the way the house was built. So with respect to the variance and hardship, I think I can move forward with that. The in-law special permit findings, it's going to be occupied by parents. The dimensional requirements are otherwise met. The gross square footage as presented, if you don't include the garage area, which will be used for some time as a rehab area or physical therapy area, fits within the requirements of in-law apartment. And there's sufficient parking on site there, and there's no health and safety codes to be concerned with. So as presented, I think I can support this.
All right, Mr. Delisle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I would agree with what Mr. Moore said. Once again, I think that the criteria for the dimensional variance are met under the circumstances, again, of a corner lot here with the second side yard being being treated as a backyard. I think that does present a hardship here in this instance, and there is some uniqueness, and it's clear that the strict application of the provision of this portion of the zoning ordinance would deprive the applicant of the reasonable use of the property. So I think I can support the variance. Mr. Moore ran us through the special permit findings, and I can support that as well. I think we need to run through the special permit findings under section XH7. So I can run through those. That the use is listed in the table of use regulations, and that is correct. The use is essential or desirable to public convenience, and I think that's been there's been evidence to satisfy this criteria. The requested use would not create any undue traffic congestion. I think that is everyone can agree to that. The requested use will not overload the water, sewer, drainage, or other systems. I think that is true, as we're going to have 2 additional parents living in a house. I don't think that would cause any overload. Special regulations for use set forth in the special permit table are fulfilled. They'll have to do that. And I think that the other elements, number 6, the requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the zoning district or adjoining districts or detrimental to health and welfare. I think that is satisfied. The requested use will not, in addition to a neighborhood, cause an excess of that particular use. I think that is satisfied also. The proposed use is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. That is correct. That the single family use or in-law apartment use is certainly consistent with the purposes of the NZO, and the proposed use shall not be conducted in a manner as to emit any dangerous, noxious, injurious, or otherwise objectionable fire, explosion, and all other such bad things as set forth in the ordinance. I think that is also the case as well. And now that being said, I think that I can support the special permit needed for this application as well.
All right, thank you, Mr. Delisle. And Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I too can support both the variance and the special permit. They meet the ordinance as articulated quite thoroughly by my 2 preceding colleagues. And I wish the applicant the best of luck with dealing with this situation, and I think it's a good plan. I can support it.
Thank you.
Very good. And Mr. Shannon?
Yes, I agree with the rest of the board, and as articulated by Mr. Moore and Mr. Delisle, I can support both the variance and the special permit. Thank you.
Very good, and thank you, Mr. Shannon. I too feel that the members of the board have articulated the supporting rationale for both the dimensional variance, the hardship, in particular for the addition, and as well as the criteria for the special permit. I believe the applicants met the burden to demonstrate that they qualify and that they're entitled to the special permit. I can support them both as well, and without further additional deliberations from members of the board, we can go ahead and close that portion of the public hearing and go to the motion and vote phase. And with that, do we have a motion to approve? Both, let's do these separately. A motion to approve the variance. We'll do the variance first, and then we'll do a second round for the special permit.
So Mr. Delisle, I'll make a motion to approve the variance for 25 Turkey Hill Road. And I believe that is application number 2021-19.
I'll second it, Ken Swanton.
All right, motion's made by Mr. Delisle and seconded by Mr. Swanton. Calling the roll, Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Do we have a motion to approve the special permit?
This is Ken Swanton. I'll make the motion to approve the special permit for the application for 25 Turkey Hill Road, which is number 2021-20.
All right, motion's made by Mr. Swanton, and do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moore here. I think the draft motion say 25 Turkey Hill Road, but we have 32 Turkey Hill Road.
Oh,
So I think,
good catch.
so I
Thank
think,
you.
well, I think we did the variance, I think at 25, which
Well, we can
we should just make note that we just,
yeah, we meant 32. So we'll just make sure
We meant 32.
in the
Yep.
in the finding and in the approval and the decision, we'll make sure that it reflects the correct address.
perfect. Just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Okay, so back to the special permit. We have a motion by Mr. Swanton?
Yes.
All right, and seconded.
By Mr. Moore, I guess. If no, did anyone? I didn't hear. I was too busy getting ready to correct our address. So
No worries. Motion's made by Mr. Swanton, seconded by Mr. Moore. Calling the roll, Mr. Moore.
yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
And Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. The motion carries, and the special permit for an in-law apartment is also approved. Good luck to you, and thank you both for your presentation, and wish you the best of luck with the project, Miss Alt and Miss Alt and Mr. Kroll.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My parents are going to be so excited. Thank you.
Have a great evening and good luck.
Thank you. You too.
Mr. Bennett, I owe you an apology, sir. I apologize for skipping past you in deliberations on that last one. It was inadvertent, but even though you
Not a problem, Mr. Chairman.
even though you're not voting, you certainly participate in deliberations, and so forgive me. I just skipped right past. I'll try not to make that mistake again. Okay, so moving on to our last application of the evening. This is the application for a special permit for nonconformities by Damian and Jill Bailey, care of Lisa Mead, Tellerman and Costa LLC, for the application at 25 Chestnut Street. The applicant seeks all necessary permits and approvals to construct two small one-story additions to a pre-existing single-family structure. Presenting on behalf of the applicant is attorney Adam Costa from Mead, Tellerman and Costa. Attorney Costa, you have the floor.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Adam Costa with Mead, Tellerman and Costa, representing the applicant Damian and Jill Bailey. This is a special permit for nonconformities, much like the other, I guess a number of others tonight. for 25 Chestnut Street, Newburyport. Again, we have a what I think is a relatively brief presentation for you tonight. First, addressing some of the particulars of the property. Have a variety of photographs and architectural and other plans to present, and then we will present the special permit criteria and why we believe that they have been satisfied for this project. So the first slide describes the existing conditions. Mr. Port, if you could move maybe to slide 2, thank you. So this is a property that's located in the R2 zoning district and the DCOD district. The existing structure has a variety of prior additions added onto it, which we'll see as we proceed to some of the plans and photographs. There are a number of existing nonconformities, as there are with several of these South End properties. Lot size 10,000 square feet is required, whereas the lot in question has 5,792 square feet. There are issues with the front, side, and rear yard setbacks. You can see those numbers here. Front is 25-foot requirement, side is 10-foot requirement, and the rear is a 25-foot requirement. And we have 3.8 feet in the front, 5.5 feet in the side, and 3 feet in the rear. Similarly, maximum lot coverage is 25%, but the lot coverage is currently at 35.7%. I think you'll see as we proceed through the presentation that while certainly there are existing nonconformities, this particular project does not significantly exacerbate any of these nonconformities. So the next slide is a series of photographs of the various elevations, various angles, photographing the site. You can see the east and west elevations on the left side of the plan the plan sheet. You can see the north and south elevations sort of in the center. And then additionally, you can see an additional perspective just to give you a little bit of an angled view from the street as you're coming up on the property from the southeast. You can see additional photograph there. These are presented just to assist the board in getting your bearings if you're not currently familiar with the site. Again, as we progress, I think you'll see that the additions are relatively minor. But let's go to the next sheet and talk a bit more about the proposed application. So the application is to construct 2 minor additions onto the single-family structure. One of them is an 11 by 10 addition to the, we say side/rear because it's the rear, but it's sort of over on the side of the structure. And the other is an 8 by 17 addition to the front/side of the structure. And again, we'll see these momentarily on the plans. Combined, these 2 additions only total about 246 square feet. So again, we're not talking about a significant addition. And we'll explain as we proceed, the objective of the additions. Which you'll get a better sense for when you see the floor plans. These additions do extend existing nonconformities, as is common with this sort of a site, but they don't create any new nonconformities, nor do they move any closer to the boundaries of the property. So the side/rear addition will be 6.5 feet from the side boundary, even though the existing setback is at its closest 5.5 feet. So we're not even as close as a portion of the structure already is. And that same addition will be approximately 18.5 feet away from the rear boundary, which is much farther away than the existing 3-foot rear yard setback at its closest. Similarly, the other addition, what we're referring to as the front/side addition, will extend a non-conforming 3.8-foot front setback by about 8 feet along Chestnut Street, but is not moving any closer to Chestnut Street. So extending the existing nonconformity, but not exacerbating it. There is a lot coverage increase. You'll see in a moment that portions of these additions are actually in areas that are currently decks. But nonetheless, there's a lot coverage increase from approximately 35.7%, as you saw on the couple of slides ago, to what is estimated to be 38.1% if both of these additions are built. So the next page of the plan, and I don't know if you can see it there. This is just an effort to sort of show, utilizing a plot plan, show you where these additions are proposed to be, and they're highlighted for your benefit. So you can see The addition that I referred to a moment ago as being the back or side addition is the 10 by 11 addition, sort of top left side of the plan as you're looking at it. You can see where that's proposed to be. A portion of it is going to be in an area where the deck currently sits, and so that deck will be modified to accommodate it. And then the second addition that we referenced, again, a substantial portion of that is currently the wood, a wood deck, but that deck will be removed in the addition, the 8 by 17 addition constructed in that location. And you'll get a better sense of these as we proceed through the plans, the architectural or elevation plans, where you can get a feel for them. So the next page is existing elevations. You can see here, again, we've got north-south, east and west elevations. We've identified proposed areas of demolition and proposed areas to become interior walls. They're shaded on these various plans in sort of a darker shade, and there are arrows pointing to them. But again, these are just the existing elevations for demolition purposes. You'll get a better sense as we proceed on to where the addition will be. You'll note that there are various other arrows on these plans, or at least the sheet of the plan, that speak to the additions that have occurred over the years. So you've got the original home, 1825. But then you've got, a 1979 edition, you've got a 1991 edition, you've got a 1996 edition of dormers. And so these are all sort of pointed out to you because I had mentioned early in the presentation, and it's in our narrative submittal as well, that there have been a series of modifications made to the structure over the years. So it's a bit of a hodgepodge of eras. And that's depicted on this plan. The next plan, next series of plans are larger size, full-scale exterior elevations for the proposed additions. So we've got first a north elevation, and then we'll proceed to an east, a south, and a west elevation. So on the north elevation here, you can see here, and again, it doesn't. These are black and white drawings, so you have to look a bit, but you can see the area is in a darker shade. It has a thicker black line outlining where the modifications are going to be made. Everything else is existing. So, everything in the center of the structure, top right side of the structure, the dormer, that's all existing. But you can see sort of on the right side of the plan, we've got this addition that's proposed. We've got existing roof slopes to continue over the addition. We've got a new door and a window that are proposed at the rear side of the property. As I had alluded to before, the existing deck will be modified to accommodate the addition. It will be shrunk in size to accommodate the addition. And we're going to continue, existing siding and whatnot, so that the addition will sort of blend seamlessly with the existing structure. We're going to match the same sort of perimeter detail and so forth as indicated here also. You'll see here on the left side of the plan, there is a reference to the mudroom addition beyond. And as we move our way around, 360 degrees around the structure, you'll get a better view of that other addition, the mudroom addition, momentarily. So the next plan is the east elevation. You'll see in the east elevation, we've now got that mudroom addition that I just referenced. It is sort of in the foreground with that thicker black line surrounding it, left side of the building here, everything else is existing. And again, you can see here that it's a 17-foot wide addition. You can see that the window is proposed to match the existing adjacent windows in the front of the house. Same thing as before, consistent siding to be maintained to provide a seamless transition from the existing structure, concrete base to match the existing concrete base of the structure. I think everything else is sort of self-explanatory. We've got a door at the back of the mudroom addition as well. So the next elevation is the south elevation. From the south elevation, you can again see just from a different angle the mudroom addition. I said it was 8 by 17 before. You can see the 8-foot width of that addition now. Once again, we've got windows to match the existing adjacent windows, fascia profile to match the existing. There is a new roof line that'll be tied into the existing structure. We have 2 skylights proposed in the roof. But everything else is meant to provide for a seamless transition. We do have a stainless steel cable railing with a wood handrail that's shown on the right side of the plan, that'll assist in getting up to the elevation of the mudroom addition. Everything on the left side of this plan is really existing condition. And then finally, the last page of the elevations are the west elevation. Again, from the west, you can see the existing deck on the far left side, which is going to be modified to accommodate the addition. You can see the 11-foot width of the rear addition. And again, I won't repeat myself, but the idea is that the exterior characteristics of this addition will be consistent with and match what exists presently at the residence. So next slide is the standard special permit criteria. Again, 4 nonconformities for single and 2-family structures. 2-part test. First part, no addition of a new nonconformity. You've heard it said a few times tonight, so I won't belabor it, but there are no new nonconformities with this application that will be created. Second part of the test is that the proposed change will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing nonconformities. In this instance, we're adding approximately 246 square feet to the structure, which is not a significant addition so far as additions go, or it's actually 2 additions. We're extending nonconformities, yes, but we're not worsening any nonconformities. We're not getting close to lot lines. And as I had explained at the start of the presentation, not only are we not getting closer to any lot lines in the existing nonconformities, but generally the additions that are being proposed are further away from the side or rear lot lines than the closest point of the existing nonconformity. So they're sort of, and this goes to the next bullet point, they're sort of filling in gaps. At least the rear side addition is filling in a gap, a jog in the existing building footprint. We're in the south end. This neighborhood has several undersized non-conforming lots and structures. So this, these sorts of non-conformities, as you know better than I do, are not uncommon on properties in the south end. The use is remaining as the least intense use, which is a single family use. And what I mean by that is that, we've got some other more intense uses on nearby properties. We've got a number of 2 families. We've got a social club on an adjacent parcel, but we're not proposing any change in the use. So the use will remain a single family, which of course is the least intense of all possible uses that could be made, other than I suppose a vacant parcel of land. And so we believe that our proposal is neither detrimental nor unusual to the neighborhood, that it will not have any sort of an impact, let alone a substantial detriment to the neighborhood as compared with the existing nonconformities. I did fail to mention at the start of my presentation that Damian Bailey is present tonight as well, listening in, participating in the Zoom to the extent needed. So if you have specific questions for him concerning the interior design, not that that's necessarily something the board may be interested in or within your purview, but if you're curious about how these additions are going to assist with the interior flow or why they're proposed, he can certainly speak to that firsthand. Although I think from what we've presented, it's sort of evident that the intent here is to increase in one instance some mudroom space, and in another instance increase some space to provide for a mudroom and a slight extension of the dining area. But again, we're not talking about 500 or 1,000 square foot additions. They're 246 square feet together. So neither of them is too significant, at least from my perspective. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly happy to answer any further questions that the board might have.
Thank you, Attorney Costa. And with that, we will close that portion of the public hearing in presentation and go to the public comment section. And Andy, if you could put up the slide, we will ask any members of the audience that are following along to click the raise hand button if you wish to be recognized, and we will hear from you. Seeing no hands, I will go once, go twice. Seeing no hands, I will close that portion of the public hearing, and we will go directly to questions from the board. We'll start with Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With a modest 2 bump outs totaling less than 200, around 250 square feet. I thought the presentation was really thorough. I don't have any questions at this time.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Delisle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the presentation was very good. It just left me with a couple of questions. First of all, can you go to the slide with the two additions highlighted in yellow? So a couple of things on this. At the very top there, I noticed that the open space requirement is 40% here, and we're really bumping up against it. Andy, could you like back out on that slide a little bit so we can see the whole all the data above? Yeah, excellent. So we've got a really small lot here at 5,800 square feet, and it's pretty built out. So the open space requirement is, with the proposed 2 additions, you're going to be at 39.9%. And if you go above 40, you do have a new nonconformity. So I think, Andy, now if you go back down to the map or to the illustration below, there's an assumption that we as a board have to make that the conversion of the existing driveway to a patio is perhaps necessary to maintain the first prong of the 2-prong criteria for a special permit, that there be no new nonconformity. And when I went by this location, there's a 2-car garage there, and the 2 cars were parked in the driveway, one in front of each bay, pretty tightly. So I guess my question would be, is there a new nonconformity?
Mr. Chairman, can I address that?
Yes, please, by all means.
So Mr. Port, if you could slide up maybe just ever so slightly, I don't think you need to zoom in necessarily, but just so we can see the bottom part of that chart. Thank you. So my understanding of the chart as it exists, and I've got a paper copy in front of me as well, so I guess I have the benefit of seeing the entire thing, but the 3 columns here, the first column, the 40% next to open space, is what's required, and that's a minimum open space percentage. The existing open space percentage is 38.7%, and the proposed open space is 39.9%. So as I read this, and I think it's a consequence of what you, Mr. Delisle, I think you hit the nail on the head when you spoke about converting the existing driveway to patio as an impervious surface, a pervious surface as opposed to an impervious surface. We're actually increasing the percentage of open space as compared to the existing condition. Now, I suspect, I don't know this for sure because I'm not an architect and I don't pretend to be, I suspect that part of the reason for that is because of the additional impervious created by virtue of the additions. Now, there's not a significant amount, and I think that's a subjective term, so easy for me to say, but if you look at the areas of the addition, I don't know, 2/3 of the addition that is located closest to Chestnut Street is already wood decking. And about 1/3 or more of the addition on the side or rear of the structure is already wood decking. But there are some areas that are going to be converted to impervious surface. So I suspect that is the conversion of the existing driveway to patio is an attempt to offset that. But not only does it offset it, but it actually goes above and beyond and improves upon the percentage of what would qualify as open space.
Yeah. Mr. Costa, I think I understand. So basically, the short of it is that the property was already non-conforming for percentage of open space. So is that correct?
Correct, and we're making it better.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's what I wanted to hear. Okay. All right. So that answers that question, that there is in fact no non-conformity. And with that, I will pass it along to my colleague, Mr. Swanton.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Delisle. Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, I found that last point interesting. I didn't even think about that, but but I'm okay with it as well. You know, I drive through, I live not very far from here. I walk down the street. I think actually what you're doing in that front addition actually, to me, improves the house. I mean, I'm not supposed to comment architecturally, but I think it looks nicer. And as someone else already pointed out, the net effect of these two additions is under 250 square feet. This is a small thing. So I don't see any new nonconformities. I think, I guess at this point, and probably forever, I have no questions.
Mr. Swanton, thank you very much. Mr. Shannon.
Chair, I've got no questions. Anything that I was pondering has been asked and answered. I'm all set. Thank you.
Very good. And Mr. Bennett.
I have no questions. I would just note the modest increase here of about 250 square feet. And I guess that increases the lot coverage by a 2.5% or so. Seems to be permissible under the regulations. So, and I think it's a perfectly acceptable application from my perspective.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. I agree with my colleagues and wouldn't need to add anything. I think it's a modest request and a well-presented proposal for this particular special permit for nonconformity. So I too can support it. Hearing no further deliberations, I'll close that portion of the public hearing, and I will ask for do we have a motion from the board, a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. Delisle. I think that was the question section.
Oh, my apologies. I thought we were in deliberations. I must have had a blackout moment. So having closed it, having no further questions is what I meant to say. We can close that portion of the public hearing and now go to deliberations. And I apologize because I think we've gone in the questions, we've gone a little bit into some deliberation discussion. So forgive that misstep. Mr. Moore, deliberations, why don't you kick things off? And then again, we are deliberating around the special permit for nonconformity. So the criteria, as the board well knows, is the special permit criteria that we must find has been presented or there's been evidence of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's no need to apologize. This board, or at least I speak for myself, often goes from question into deliberation, so it can be confusing. I can certainly understand that. So on the official deliberations, well presented, I think modest proposal. Again, we're not supposed to comment on aesthetics, but I do think it's, it's a great looking from the street. And since there's no new nonconformity created, it just extends existing nonconformity, side, front, and rear setbacks, and a little bit of lot coverage. I don't have a problem with that. And we also have to make certain that it's not more detrimental to the neighborhood. And again, modest size of 246 square feet when you include both bump outs. I don't see anything with respect to size and massing that could make this more detrimental to the neighborhood. So I can fully support it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Moore. And Mr. Delisle.
I will concur with Mr. Moore on this one. No new nonconformity and not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood.
Very good, Mr. Delisle. Thank you. Mr. Swanton.
My colleagues already said it very well, and I also concur and can support this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Swanton. Mr. Shannon?
With all statements previously made, and I can support this application.
Very good, Mr. Shannon. Thank you. And Mr. Bennett?
Yes, I would agree that the two-pronged test has been met here, and I would approve this application.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. And I share, again, to restate what I had said earlier, I do share my colleagues' sentiment on this and find that the applicant has met the burden and demonstrates that there's no addition of a new nonconformity. And it does not, there doesn't appear to be anything that indicates that the project would be substantially more detrimental or detrimental in any way to the neighborhood than the pre-existing conditions. So I too can support it. And with that, if there are no additional deliberations, I will go ahead and close the deliberations section. And this time, at the right time, I will invite a member of the board to make a motion to approve.
This is Mr. Shagden. I'll make a motion to approve the special permit for nonconformities application for 25 Chestnut Street, docket number 2021-21.
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Do we have a second?
Mr. Delisle, I'll second that.
Thank you. Motion's made by Mr. Shannon and seconded by Mr. Delisle. Calling the roll. Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That's 5 in the affirmative. The ayes have it and the motion carries. And the application for special permit for nonconformities is granted. Thank you very much, and to the members of the board and to Attorney Costa for presenting. Wish you the best of luck. And
Thank you for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
our pleasure. With that, we members of the board and members of the audience that remain, we've concluded the public hearings portion of the meeting, and we can move now swiftly into the business meeting. We're only dealing with matter A, which is the approval of the minutes. At the request of Jennifer Blanchet, we've been asked to table a discussion by and with the planning director on conditions on architectural treatment. So we'll press pause on that, and we will just elicit for now a motion to approve the minutes or any comments, changes, or revisions. If you could post those, and otherwise we'll go ahead and go to a motion. Any
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, it's Mr. Moore here. I just had one edit. I don't have it in front of me, but I did make note at the bottom of page 3. My comments were there were many positive elements, and it would be I said an improvement, and I think it's in there as approval, so it should be just corrected to many positive elements, and it would be an improvement, not an approval.
Very good. Any additional comments or changes? Hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So move, Mr. Moore, as amended.
And I'll second that.
Seconded, Ken Swanton.
All right, motion is made by Mr. Moore and seconded by Mr. Swanton to approve the minutes with the amendment as noted. Mr. Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Delisle.
Yes.
Mr. Swanton.
Yes.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Bennett.
Yes.
And Rob Champetti, I vote yes. That is 6 in the affirmative. The ayes have it. The motion carries and the minutes are approved. And with that, I wish to thank everyone. That concludes our business of the ZBA this evening. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Ken Swanton.
All right. Motion is made. Do we have a second?
Second, Mr. Moore.
All right. All those in favor, you can just respond with an audible aye. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Audible aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. So our meeting is adjourned. Have a great night, everyone. And Caitlin, Caitlin and Gretchen and Andy, thank you all for your ongoing support. I know these evenings are really late, but everyone have a great evening, and we'll catch you next time.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Nice work, everybody.
Take care.